Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to another episode, the 31st episode of the PM Learning Series. My name is Shivi. I'm a product manager at LinkedIn and host of today's show. Please drop in the chat where you're joining us from and introduce yourself. So this is a very special series where we celebrate the International Women's Day or week or month, where we are going to have very important conversation about women innovators in tech and product. But before we start, I just want to do a quick intro. The PM Learning Series is a series of live streaming events where industry thought leaders and product practitioners share their product journey, as well as lessons learned along the way to inspire aspiring and current product builder like you to level up your product career and build great products. So please check out the events details to subscribe to a newsletter that sent out recaps of key takeaways from all of our events and future event updates. We have lineup all the way till June and more coming. So make sure you don't miss out. So today, as I introduced, it's a special series. We're going to do a panel discussion. It's actually the first time the PM Learning Series hosting a fireside chat, not with one guest, but with three really amazing women. So I'm going to bring them to the screen one by one so that you get a chance to kind of hear how amazing they are. And thank you, folks, for joining. Andrea from LA, Susanna from Toronto, Danielle from Detroit, and Saudi Arabia. Wow, really amazing places. Czech Republic, Peru, Nigeria. So hello, everyone. Really international crowd. Awesome. All right. As I introduce, I'm going to bring the guests one by one to the stream. Say hi to them. Continue to introduce yourself. If you have any question, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll love to pick them out from time to time. All right. The first one up, I'm going to introduce Shikha, who's a product leader, innovator, and former entrepreneur, currently leading a team that works on AI discovery engine for Reels at Meta. A very interesting product. I'm sure folks have a lot of questions if we get a chance to dive in. Previously, Shikha led the consumer product strategy and vision for various products in the productivity space on Google Assistant. Shikha has been featured among one of the top women trailblazers globally in conversation AI. So thank you so much, Shikha, today for joining us. You're on mute, Shikha.
Oh, thank you. And very excited to talk to all of you.
Awesome. All right. Next up, Alex. So Alex is the new Chief Product Officer at Cerebral, is moving and driving her team towards a very important mission, democratizing mental health care for all. That's a really exciting role. Prior to that, Alex was the Chief Product Officer at Everlast, where she built the product from the ground up, making it easy and engaging for women to invest in their future. I love one thing, Alex, I have to say just up front, how you work at product that's just like so impactful, doing good on some of the most important causes, potentially impacting women more. And so love to have you here. You and the founding team at your previous company were featured on the cover of Money magazine in March of 2018. So you're being recognized for working on very important causes. So thank you for joining us today as well.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Last but not least, Zoia. So by day, Zoia is the Vice President, Product Manager in the digital payment space at JPMorgan Chase, working on digital payment products for millions of customers. But by night, Zoia is a Women in Innovation podcast host with a mission to get more women in innovation leadership roles. So today's topic is going to be very handy. And the WIN podcast has over 30,000 listeners from over 150 countries. So they have joined along the conversation, to inspire people on, about topics around innovation, gender, and careers. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Super excited to be here with this amazing group of women. So what a way to end the week.
Yeah, awesome. We also have some allies and men's in the chat as well, joining us from Kenya, Washington, Egypt, just Portland. Thank you so much. Mexico, India, Yeah, always happy to be here on Friday. Is my happy space to say hi to so many international folks and global community of product builders. Um, so without further ado, let's get started. I did a brief intro about some of your journey, but I'm sure there's more to it. But can you maybe briefly share, what inspired you to pursue your career in product?
Sure, I can super quickly kick it off. I was a product pivoter, so I think I pivoted 2 or 3 times to get to product. Started out as a chief of staff in the Israeli intelligence for 2 years and then was in luxury fashion and marketing. And I always felt really frustrated by the fact that I would get handed something over and then have to figure out how to get consumers excited about it. So I said, why do I not just change the thing? So it started with me being at a startup for a year and then working on a digital bank at Citi for 2 years and now at JPMorgan Chase. So I'm a chronic pivoter, but now I feel like I want to do product forever. So that's very exciting.
That's awesome. What's your
I can
journey,
go.
Alex? Oh, Shikha.
Yeah, I think I started my career as an engineer, and I think I kind of over time felt that I really enjoyed the product pieces of it a lot more. I was working in a startup where there weren't any product managers, and there wasn't really somebody putting on the customer hat to think about what are the user problems, and then we should build the solutions. I took on that role over time, and I really enjoyed it. And then I did my own startup where I was the head of product and technology, and over time I felt like this is the path for me.
So I think Shikha and Zoya have very common paths in the sense that people typically tend to, pivot into product. I, on the other hand, have been in product since the very beginning of my career. So while I was in grad school in New York, I interned at Weight Watchers, and I was working on a project in their food database, and the food database happened to be a product and sat within the product team. And it was the first time that I learned what a product manager was. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. These people are solving very fun and real problems and coming up with like very creative solutions to do that. And when I finished my internship, I was like, I don't care what I have to do to be on this team. Throw me in. So I've been in product for a long time now, and
It's really
love every
interesting. These
second
people
of it.
are solving real problems.
I needed to unmute myself. All right, next question. Very interesting career journey so far and the different choices people make. I'm curious, as women in product, because product is a pretty demanding role if you think about it, right? It encompasses a lot of different skills, and in very different array. You don't really manage people, even though it has the manager title in it. But the biggest myth is like you're not really CEOs of your product. Yes, you own the vision, but you don't own or manage any people that work for you. So what do you think, at least until a certain title, then you own the PMs, but not the engineers, the designer, everyone that work with you, right, on the product. So what do you think has been some of the biggest challenge, especially maybe around women who tend to be, say, suffer imposter syndrome a lot more than men. So what are some of the biggest challenge that face in your journey to grow in product management, and particularly as a woman, and how did you overcome them?
Sure. I'm happy to kick this one off because I could write a whole book about it. I think that what people don't realize, the less glitzy glammy part of being a product manager, is most of the time you say the word no, because everybody has ideas about features and what they want to get done. So much of your job is saying no. And especially as a woman, you are then kind of generalized to be the bossy one, or, some of those negative stereotypes that women already get. But as a product manager, I think those things are extra amplified, which is really, frankly, challenging. On a positive note, I feel that the way to overcome that is to really foster those one-on-one relationships, so people really know your heart and they can differentiate who you are versus the work that you're doing.
That's a really great point.
I can add to that. I think one of the challenges I faced, especially early on in my career, was to be taken seriously for my ideas. Like a lot of times when a woman walks in the room, you have to work extra hard to earn credibility for what you are saying, because there's an unconscious bias that people are operating from. And I think the way to kind of mitigate that is to build allies. Like a lot of times now, when I go to a new company, I spend a lot of time, like Zoya mentioned, building those one-on-one relationships upfront and building allies and pre-aligning my ideas with them, so that when I walk into like larger rooms or larger meetings to have important conversations, I have that inbuilt credibility.
I'm going to add to that. I think a lot of times, women look for mentors in the company. And, having a mentor is great. But what's even more important is having someone who's a sponsor for you. So, someone who is fighting for you or your project or your initiative when you're not in the room. And so, building relationships with people so that they can be fighting for you, I think is really important. And you don't do that in a room with a bunch of people. You really do that one-on-one. And so if there is someone in your org that you're looking to get to know better, invite them for coffee, virtual coffee if you're remote, but really trying to spend some time to, build those relationships, because that will help you, with your stakeholders and your engineers.
Just one really quick add to what everyone said. I want to call that out, that as women, we are uniquely having to manage this in addition to doing our job, which is why I think it is so challenging to be a woman. So it's just a lot more overhead of getting to the same point of success that others would.
That's a great call. I love how the default mode for product is actually saying no to a million requests or ideas that come your way, and then think about how to be taken seriously to overcome some of the unconscious bias, and gaining that awareness to be able to do that, I think helps. Yes, it's extra effort, like you point out, Zoa, but just that level of awareness and educating people, building that relationship in private settings, right? Alex, one-on-one, like taking the effort. It's helped getting you to a long way. I just want to double down on today's topic is about women as innovators, right? A lot of times as PMs, we're trying to push for our big ideas to be built. So how have you approached like advocating ideas, getting the resource and buy-in within your organization to be able to get funding to work on your idea? And I'm particularly curious, given the different backgrounds for a stage of companies that you have worked at. Some of you have worked at both the larger and smaller company, but just how does that approach differ? And what have worked? So any example, success or failed example that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, I can take this one to start. Well, it's very important that you are not only sharing your opinions, but that you are backing up your ideas by data. And it doesn't have to be quantitative data. I think qualitative data is just as important. Here at Cerebral, we are actually going through an exercise where we're repackaging our offering. And we decided to get buy-in by doing what I'm calling product concept testing. We put a bunch of different packaging ideas in front of folks, got feedback on them, both, via survey as well as user interviews, just to sort of give us direction. Like it was not statistically significant, but it was more information than we had than if we did not, go down that route. From there, we got buy-in, but we're still not done, right? Like it's important that we continue to test as we, roll out the product. So we will be working on usertesting.com to try to figure out the right way to display these new packages and whatnot. But if you can always go back to a data point, I think that's really, really helpful, because a lot of folks can debate things, off of opinion and passion, but it's very hard to move forward that way.
Yeah, I like that, particularly not just that the emphasis on data point, but also how scrappy it is. You don't need to have all the offering built in, like all the messaging. You can put a quick painted door test and collect data.
Exactly.
That scrappiness and the iteration, how willingness to pivot and learn. I think it's very important to help you get buy-in for your ideas. Anything to add, Shikha?
Yeah, I can add to that, especially for a big company. I would say I think there's a few things to keep in mind when you're trying to get buy in for an idea, especially if it's across sub organizations in the company. And that's what makes it different from working in a smaller company. So, for example, at Google, when I was trying to start a new product line, there were 3 or 4 other product areas involved that would kind of whose vision would be impacted by that product line or whose buy-in we would need. So I think the first thing, like Alex said, is always to have data, because that helps gain credibility, whether it is quantitative data or qualitative data, user research, but have everything that you have as an evidence to back up your hypothesis. And then I think the second thing is to kind of really work with those key stakeholders in smaller settings to get their buy-in before you go to like a larger buy-in process. Like really build those relationships with the stakeholders in those other teams or other organizations, pitch your idea to them in a more informal setting, whether over a lunch or a coffee or like a more informal one-on-one or a small group, and start to build that confidence in small groups. And then you can kind of share your idea in a larger group. There are other tactics to do that as well. For example, I used to run like UX sprints or brainstorming process where you invite like those large teams to participate in the idea generation process early on, which kind of makes them feel like it is their idea and their vision as well. And the team is collectively presenting this vision versus this one PM trying to convince everybody else of their vision.
And I also think that people look at innovation as innovation with a capital I, which is beautiful. And I think that we should always be striving for this idea of innovation with an I. But I genuinely believe that true innovation stems from solving a customer problem, which is a very generic statement to say. So what I mean by that more specifically is that you need to make your company, small or big, realize that there's a true urgency to the problem that you're solving. It's not like, wouldn't it be nice for us to launch this spaceship that could be really cool? It was like, we must solve this problem for this customer now, or we will fall behind as a market player and cause harm even to our customers. And I think that that's what people don't quite, I think, grasp about innovation.
There's so many just tidbits and points here. I love the, not only that we need to solve the problem, right, with the capital I, but the urgency of why is that problem needs to be solved now. I think that urgency helps you build a case. And then Shikha, to your point, like, convincing or influencing is a marathon, right? Not a sprint. So you need to do all the smaller group homeworks, meeting with people, building that relationship to get to that point. And then inviting people in the journey to help them co-create with you. That's super important.
Alex, say, I love what Zoya said, because like timing is also a very big piece to it. Like data is like one piece of the story, but if everything were data driven, like the folks who study statistics and whatnot would all be like gazillionaires at the end of the day. Like it does sometimes take a leap of faith, and hey, the timing is right, and so painting those putting those pieces together, I think, is really important, and not to be forgotten.
That's awesome. Yes, absolutely. So we actually received 2, I think, really great comment from the community. It's $1 million question that women always face, a struggle that we always face. So the first one is Aubrey was saying the comment around like, hey, you're bossy as a women leader. And sometimes we don't know how to take that in, because when man is being, aggressive or like being vocal, not necessarily aggressive, but being vocal about their opinion, they're projected as perceived as being confident and competent. That comes along with, having that confidence in them, right? But when women do the same thing, sometimes we get like, oh, wow, don't be so bossy. And you're like, you don't really know how to react to that. But then on the other hand, we have another comment, like, hey, as women, you need to build a relationship, but you also need to show that right level of confidence. So because no matter how great you are, people might not see it. So you have to really find that right balance between projecting that you're confident, you're warm, but not like off-putting as bossy. What are some of the tips that have helped you to be able to find that balance alongside overcoming your own like imposter syndrome? So you have to show up well, how do you maybe rewrite that narrative to be like, it's okay to be bossy, or other things that you can do to help you bring that warmth and that more positive charisma without being labeled like aggressive and bossy?
I can take this one. I think one thing that has really helped is aligning people on the common goal that both of us or all of us are working towards rather than making it about you versus me. For example, it's much easier to demand from somebody to deliver on a deadline when you frame it as this is a commitment to the company or this is a certain commitment we made to the customer or to the partner versus, hey, I am asking you to do this, and constantly like reinforcing that narrative in the conversation has also helped me create my brand as somebody who objectively cares about what's right for the company, what's right for the customer, what's right for the organization, and that kind of helps build that credibility. I think it's also about being flexible in your behaviors. Like you said, Shivi, it's not about being bossy all the time versus being warm or too nice or too polite all the time for the sake of it. It's about assessing your judgment of that situation and what that demands you to be as a leader, because your first job is as a leader to your customers, your partners, your company. And then people really respect that.
So I like to be open and honest about what has to happen. And sometimes that does come off in a very direct way. But I try to use humor to make it a little lighter. So sometimes I might say something like, hey, Zoya, here's the deadline. This is what we have to do. We promised this to, the executive committee. This is what it is. Guess what? Your time to shine. Like, we'll add in something that's kind of fun to keep it going. But, it does, you want to be direct. You want people to know what you're trying to get done, but you want people to realize that you have a heart, you have a personality, like we're all in this together kind of thing. But I do try to add in some humor.
And I'm very, very similar to you, Alex. The one add I would also say to that is I really like to authentically show that I am with you in this product, even though it's not my job, like that specific activity or that blocker or that timeline. I am the kind of person that even if, the engineering team is working late at night, I will hop into the Zoom just to be like, hey, can I be helpful? Just to show, because I genuinely want them to know while I can't roll up my sleeves and code, I am there with them and I'm not just passing work off to people. I think it's really important to show that you're really truly in it. And then I think the other piece is that authentic leadership, especially when one-on-one you can push boundaries. I am probably notorious for, in my company, working with people that I manage and then people I work with and being like, I think this thing is really stupid, but we got to do it. Let's just get on board and do it. So similar to Alex, I really show my true colors in the hopes that people will really take it as a good thing and appreciate me for it. And hopefully it doesn't come back and bite me in the A.
I do think humor goes a long way. I think that's my secret sauce as well. I don't think it talks well enough. I think someone should write a book about it and just on like how humor can bring can bring a lot of positivity, liveliness to a lot of tense conversation. There are a lot of great questions and comments in the chat. We only have 7 minutes to go. So I'm going to do a little bit of rapid fire round to make sure we touch upon some of the most important conversation. First question from a LinkedIn user is, what kind of leadership qualities that you think women need to be amplified to make us being perceived or taken more serious or be able to drive more outcome? Maybe we're naturally excel at certain traits more than men, that we can really double down on those.
Sure.
What are some qualities?
Super quick. I know it's a fire round. I think technology. I think even in today's day and age, women are still, even in product, are shying away from the tech side of things. So read the API documentation, get on board with technology being the root part of your job. That's just one.
I'm gonna say stay away from the water cooler talk. The gossip and whatnot, and really focus on the work and why you're here and, your user base. I think that would go a long way for women.
I'm going to say effective communication. I think especially as you grow more senior as a leader, it's important to learn like how to communicate effectively. And I think like Zoya said, I've observed a lot of women kind of shy away from that. And that's like upskilling yourself as you go up is very important.
Yeah. I think that it touches upon some of the other observation on the other end of I'm not worried about being bossy because I work in finance. Like, I'm saying from Sharon's standpoint, right? I'm in a man full of SVPs of male. So how do I exclude executive presence? Executive presence was my answer to the previous question. Any tips from, panelists on like how to project a stronger presence?
All opinions are my own, so I'm just going to start by saying that. I have gone as far as to say, hey, I'd really like to finish what I'm saying when somebody's interrupted me. I don't think that that's what you should be doing in every meeting, but there is value in actually calling somebody out and saying, I'd like to finish my sentence. And I think it leaves a strong mark. The other piece is being unafraid to jump in when somebody says, are there any questions? I am typically the first person to ask a question because I can't predict what's going to happen in the rest of the meeting. So those are two things that have been really helpful for me.
I was going to say a lot of this, I think, stems from outside of the actual like meeting room or boardroom, right? It's making the connections outside of the room. So I don't know, like let's say your SVP went to the same school you did and you guys can talk about like the sports team, or maybe you both live on the Upper West Side, or like whatever it might be. But if you can find some kind of common ground that you can connect on, I think that's going to go a long way in the work too.
Yeah, I think +1 to what Alex said. And then I think in addition to that, like really believing in yourself and standing your ground where it's necessary and knowing when to do that is like really important, because people like kind of respect people who they know are kind of authentic and stand their ground.
And give feedback. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I got a framework a couple years ago from a great manager. It's called the 3C framework for executive presence. The first C stands for confidence. Second comes from competence, so you know your stuff, right? Women usually don't have problem with competence at all. I think we usually, on the other side, we know too much, and we have too much to say that we don't necessarily, know how to say in the right way with the right level of details. The third piece is composure, which I think sometimes is missing in women, especially, for example, I'm an Asian woman, so I'm 5'4", I'm pretty small. And in a room, before COVID, I realized I sometimes get feedback that I could look like fidgety, or sometimes I don't take up as much space. And Amy Cotty had that whole conversation about power pose. But power pose isn't just like that 30-second before a meeting start and you do like this hand gesture. It's about being comfortable taking up the space, both virtually and physically, such that that's how your radius start to shine, right? Like and confidence just comes from a lot of action and practice. I think the more you speak up, the more you take up that space and really own it, the more you're going to build that confidence over time. And so I think if I were to share how to build executive presence, those are some frameworks that I keep in mind. Zoe, you have one last thing to say, or should we move on to it?
No, I was just going to say keep providing the feedback also, because people may not be realizing their own biases. So give them the benefit of the doubt.
Great. We're going to conclude with two more questions. Again, rapid round, focus on different stage of career development for women. So we have a question from Paula and a couple other folks actually around, hey, I'm a career pivoter. I wanted to pivot into product. Today's marketplace is very challenging. And sometimes as women, maybe you have a family you need to take care of, but you're trying to leave your dream, getting into product, this dream job. So I get that question a lot. And I just want to hear, like, what are some candid advice from you?
So my first piece of advice is talk to your chief product officer at your company. Let them know that you are interested in getting into product management and that you would love to, help with a project on the side. Just inform them that, it won't hinder your day job and whatever team you might be on, but that you're very interested in looking to do more. I think that can go a long way. Going to like a new company into a new role is hard, but because you understand the domain in your current company, I think just making it known that, you have an interest can really go a long way.
I also think that your first product role doesn't have to be your last product role. So you may want to work at a big tech company that may be your dream, but that doesn't mean that that's where you have to start. So especially in today's current challenging job market, there are still a lot of startups that are super understaffed and that are hiring and more likely to take a chance on a pivoter. So I started my career in a 10-person startup and then pivoted into larger companies. So definitely also do that if you're looking outside of your company.
Yeah, I think plus one to both what Zoya and Alex said. Like, look for opportunities that are out there and in any market. And in today's market, also, there are people who are still looking. One thing I would add is like really work on your story. Like, a lot of times people prioritize quantity over quality. Like, they'll apply to these 100 jobs out there versus like really look at those 5 or 10 job openings that are really a fit for your profile and your background, and then work a lot on making your story shine for those hiring managers and those roles.
I think plus one to the story, like, quality over quantity, and really build a connection, do the research so that you can like stand out. You can really highlight your transferable skill, because product is it's a very, like you can work in many different capacity. You can be project managers in 20% of domain, be an analyst on another 20%, and then working with engineers. Like if you have experience with those domains, that's how you can tell, hey, how did I solve a very complex problem? How did I bring clarity? How do I prioritize different requests, right? It's not necessarily a feature, but what's your framework to go about aligning people, rallying people around a problem? So definitely detailed to that. Last question I want to ask. The question is framed around company culture, but I want to up-level it a little bit and just say women sometimes we're known for being heads down. Right? If there's a happy hour, I have a deadline. Man would choose, let me go to happy hour and come back and figure out how to finish this work. But women, we're like good students, right? We're like, okay, no, I have this deadline. I'm not going to go to this happy hour. I'm going to like finish nice, check all my fonts and, everything. What are some of your tips for asking for promotion? Like, how do you have that conversation? How do you carry it? How do you drive your career development?
You are the person who is the CEO of your career, the same way that you're the CEO of your product. So I would say you cannot expect somebody to tap you on the shoulder and say, I think you're going to get promoted. Here you go. I think at the beginning of every year, I set quarterly and yearly goals. And I also think about my 30, 60, 90-day plans. So I think you have to be your own advocate. And whether that's trading off the happy hour to the work or any other choices that you have to make, I think it's critical. And that does tap into your company culture and really understanding who it is that you need to get buy-in from in order to get promoted.
Yeah, I think it's very important to realize that you are the driver of your career. Like you are in the driver's seat. Nobody else is going to drive it for you. And, like every time I have a new boss or I am in a new role, one of the first conversations I have is, so what does it take to get to the next level? Or what does success look like in this role? And really, as Zoya said, articulate them in clear goals and then hold the manager or skip manager or whoever are the right stakeholders accountable over time on, here's my progress against these goals. How do you think we can proceed on this?
So 2 things here. One, my biggest pet peeve is when someone comes up to me and they're like, I deserve a promotion. I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, you need to come to me to explain why you deserve a promotion. And usually that is, hey, this is how I move the business and the metrics. And so like coming with, bullet points to follow that conversation up or to happen that conversation, I find really, really helpful. As a leader, I'm in lots of different conversations a day. And sometimes like it is hard to remember like all of the successes that like each individual team member of mine has had. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is don't be shy if there's like a particular area that you want to own or that you want to move into. Especially in a remote environment, it is very hard to connect. And I am not a mind reader by any means. And so letting your manager and your manager's manager know like what you're looking to do and like where you're looking to move and to see your career, I think is really important.
Thank you so much for a lot of advice. We're coming up on time. I think the LinkedIn community have really liking this conversation. Be your own advocate is the perfect advice to bring into the weekend. and for the week ahead and the months ahead. A lot of folks have enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much, Shikha, Zoa, and Alex for joining us. Hopefully we can all have this kind of conversation, not just during International Women's Day or week, but all the time as we're learning to play a bigger role, have more executive presence, bring humor into the conversation. And I'm hoping to see many, many more women to play bigger in the coming days and months and years. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you next Friday.